All right. For those of you who aren't sick of me yet from watching my live music show last night, thank you for joining me today. Oh, jeez. Inch that over a little bit there. All right. Welcome to another episode of The Rough Report. I am Jimmy Ruffian, reporting from downtown Toronto, right here in my home studio. What are we talking about today? We're talking about some Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens stuff, because they're a never-ending well of some kind of morbid entertainment, a parade of idiocy, if you will. And the thing is, I don't even know if they're necessarily like something I question all the time. Here, I'm going to get this music off here. Yeah, that's just my Facebook thing. Yeah, let's see here. Sorry, I had a video queued up. There it is. All right. The thing is, I don't necessarily know if what they're if what they're doing is genuine on their part. Like, I'm sure there's a certain amount of ideology and genuine belief behind what they're doing, but I don't know if they're actually so incredibly not self-aware or just not aware that what they're doing is a grift. I think they're pretty aware of that. Like, they're getting a lot of money to basically have a job that puts them on TV and where they can act perpetually outraged about everything all the time. I think that's, for them, it feels like a pretty sweet ride, and they want to keep milking it as much as possible. That's just the general impression I get. And that's why I refer to them as grifters, is that they're trading in this fake outrage to make you scared of straw men and boogeymen that don't exist. They fearmonger while telling you to be afraid of fearmongers. It's really quite the I feel like intellectual sleight of hand is too good a term for it. So if you're joining me live, please let me know that you're here. I love seeing you in the chat, as always. This is my first time streaming to Twitch. I have no idea how Twitch works. Hello, if you're watching on Twitch. Anybody have any good Twitch tips for me? I am all ears. This is all very new to me. So before I get into the this main part here, I'm going to talk about some more depressing and more local news. This right here on the CBC. Ontario marks highest daily COVID-19 case count in 2 months as variants of concern take over new infections. So, yeah, that pretty much says it all right there. The variants are apparently, reportedly, more of a threat to spread amongst younger people. And that kind of increases the rate of infection ostensibly, in that, we've had the highest amount of cases for 2 months. And according to this article, what does it say here? Variants of concern now account for more than half of all COVID-19 cases in Ontario. So now it's half. And that was the message from Associate Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Barbara Yaffe. I apologize if I mispronounced that, at a provincial news conference on Thursday. That would be today. There are now 1,563 confirmed variant of concern cases. Variant of concern. This is strange. It's like a mouthful. Variant of concern. You think they'd have like a abbreviation for that, a VOC? Is that just say variant? I don't know. It seems like a mouthful. Confirmed variant of concern cases in Ontario, the majority of which are I don't know if we're all necessarily concerned about the numbers. I'm not that scientific explicitly on this show, but yeah, that's basically it. The cases keep going up, and we keep doing that, like I discussed on the show before, the yo-yo thing, where we're feeling like we're sick of this lockdown stuff, so we open back up again a little bit, and then the cases shoot up again, and then we have to lock down again, and then we get sick of it again. It's, instead of nipping this thing in the bud like we should have in the first place, and like so many other countries were successful at nipping this in the bud, we dragged it out this way through this yo-yo effect of opening and closing, and it hasn't done us any favors. It's just been, rather than ripping the Band-Aid right off, it's just like a slow peel. I feel like it's so obvious, but Doug Ford and any politician that has failed on the front of keeping people safe under COVID should be forced to resign. This is like basic social care 101, right? Like, we got Andrew Cuomo in New York, who basically, he seemed like he was did a good PR campaign in terms of making it look like he was doing a great job with COVID. And then it turned out that that wasn't really the case. People were dying in long-term care homes. Same with Doug Ford here in Ontario, except I don't think anybody was under a major impression that Doug Ford was doing particularly good. I know there was a little bit of buzz around that, but about 8 months ago, saying, you know what, I don't think Doug Ford is doing too bad at this. And that's obviously because the bar is set so low. We expected so little of somebody like Premier Ford to do anything effective with COVID, that the fact that he did anything at all just came as a pleasant surprise. But I don't think that should blind us from the fact that his continuous ignoring of health experts and being altogether too worried about appeasing the economy and its corporate masters to do the right thing for the public good. And that's kind of... That's it. Like, Andrew Cuomo failed in New York. Doug Ford's failing here in Ontario. Several other states, several other provinces have dropped the ball on this. And then even federally here in Canada, I haven't entirely researched the mechanics of it, to be honest with you, but the fact that we've come up so short on the bid for vaccines seems pretty wild to me. I think that came as a surprise to even people who weren't necessarily fans of, say, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau, to begin with. But even then, they were fairly surprised that this vaccine thing is going way more slowly than it ever should have. But yeah, and that's something we can't forget. When it comes to election time, when it comes to, who was there pushing the policy that was good for the public health and who wasn't. And those people have to be held accountable for that. And we, as in both America and Canada, we are not collectively very good at holding public officials accountable for the horrible things they say and do. It's just simple as that. But like hell, we're not even great at holding people like this accountable. Although there's lots of shows like mine that try and point out the grift that these people are trying to pull off on you in perpetuity. It's always the same grift with these guys. And it's accusing the enemy of the exact same thing that they're doing. Again, it's like I'm not sure how self-aware they are of this. I think it's enough to be able to pull off the grift, but I think there's like an actual feeling of genuineness behind it, perhaps perpetuated by the fact that it is profitable to them, and that gives them, you know, a driven cognitive bias towards their position. But what Ben Shapiro is about to do here is basically everything he's complained about in cancel culture. He is essentially going to himself debunk in a sort of lame attempt to defend traditional conservative values. Let's take a look.
And it's worth tracing for a second, because what we have seen is that there was an argument that went something like this in the 1970s. What I do in my bedroom is my business. And that argument is somewhat convincing. For those of us who just want to live a life where we are left alone by others, the idea that consensual activity between adults in private is basically none of the government's business, and societally speaking, can be condemned by others, but really is not generally the thing that people should be discussing in public. Yeah,
so what could he be talking about there? It almost sounds like, you know, the government staying out of your private business, but society can still perhaps be condemning of the activity. I guess that's okay. He seems to say in this roundabout soft language as if he's not entirely okay with letting people do what they want in their bedrooms and not feeling like he can criticize it. What could he possibly be talking about? Well, let's just go a few seconds before.
Oh, as you know, the Grammys the other night featured what was
the Grammys the other night. And what does he refer to as the Grammys the other night? What was the Grammys, Ben?
It was essentially soft pornography. Now, that's really what it was. If you go back to like 1990 and you look at what softcore pornography was at the time, that is what now appears on mainstream television shows in the United States today.
Remember how on the, what was it, the Ed Sullivan Show, and Elvis was on there for the first time, and his gyrating hips were just too sexual for television, so they had to film him from the waist up. This is the modern equivalent. With Ben Shapiro here being upset that basically women were scantily clad at the Grammys, because I distinctly remember, say, Britney Spears being scantily clad at the Grammys on a number of occasions, Christina Aguilera, Dirty. Do you remember that song? She got a little bit roasted for that, and that was considered controversial at its time, but that was like, it wasn't even that intense. It was like the typical kind of, oh, that's obscene and vulgar sort of stuff, and the hype quickly sort of died down, right? As it always does with these people. It's like, it's a boring narrative that dies out quickly. But in the case of when it comes to Cardi B, it seems, and these grifters, and the fact that Cardi B is so popular, was a sex worker, and basically had the biggest song of 2020 in WAP, a song about women embracing their own sexuality in a very, you know, out there way, which is akin to the history of pop music. The history of rock and roll is always pushing that boundary, is always exploring sexuality, is always exploring the human condition. And a big part of that human condition is our sexuality and how we feel about it. And Ben Shapiro seems to have a big problem when anybody does that. You know, I guess it's okay that what people do in their bedroom stays in their bedroom. I guess that's okay. But now the fact that he feels like that bedroom activity is being put on television, well, that's just beyond unacceptable, right? Back is starting to get sore. I don't have my regular office chair in here at the moment. I'm above 30 when I'm complaining about lower back pain. Yeah, so now that it's like he can't stand that it's already in the bedroom and it might stay there and he doesn't know about it and he doesn't get to complain and be offended by it. But now that it's in there, now he really gets to be offended by it. And just referring to this as like softcore pornography. First of all, like pop music in a lot of ways is not meant for children. It never has been. That's why Kids Bop is a thing, is for like you kind of like uptight Puritan parents out there that don't like the idea of their kids, knowing and being familiar with the original version of pop songs. They have a whole Kids Bop sort of sub-industry built around that very concept. Like Cardi B was never meant to be a role model. These pop stars were never meant to be young. They're not the Wiggles. I don't know what in even right off the bat from the beginning of Cardi B's career would indicate to you that she is there for the children. But if you can frame it that way perpetually and act like this is an affront to family values, and the only thing that's an affront to traditional family values is the fact that it's, truly speaking in terms of our culture, is the fact that it's black women having power and agency over their sexuality. And I mean power and agency in the sense of not only like that they were able to perform this song on the Grammys and that it was such a huge hit that, it paved the way for that to happen. And they were able to put their art out there on TV and be graphic and own it the way they wanted to. And isn't that the glorious freedom of expression and freedom of speech that Ben Shapiro is always preaching about? What is his problem? Well, let's get a little further down the grifter rabbit hole here.
And the shift in American life from what was private activity to public activity that must be approved by the public is pretty astonishing. And it's worth tracing for a second, because what we have seen is that there was an argument that went something like this in the 1970s. What I do in my bedroom is my business. And that argument is somewhat convincing. For those of us who just want to live a life where we are left alone by others, the idea that consensual activity between adults in private is basically none of the government's business, and societally speaking, can be condemned by others, but really is not generally the thing that people should be discussing in public. Yeah, that at least is kind of fair, right? There's at least something to that argument.
Fair. It's
but
only
the
kind
argument
of
from
fair.
what I do,
There's something to the argument. Sounds like Ben isn't really that about freedom of the individual and freedom of expression when he only thinks that there's kind of an argument in one's ability to have the kind of sex that they want to have between two consenting adults in private. Everything about everything he's saying kind of opens up his grift in that he's not upset about freedom of expression and freedom of speech. It's not an area of concern for him. It's literally just traditional values. The fact that homosexual people exist, trans people exist, black women exist and are able to express themselves freely. That is an affront to what he identifies as traditional American values, and the whole concept of, say, like relates to MAGA and the Make America Great Again. The idea is the fictionalized idea of going back to some sort of tradition that was perfect and a society that didn't have the problems that it has today. And it's a lie. Obviously, if you look back at whatever traditional fictionalized time period he's talking about, you quickly realize that it is an entirely fictionalized account. There's nothing of substance or reality there. This idea that there was a time where racism didn't exist or trans people didn't exist. No, trans people always existed. There is tons of historical accounts of this. A lot more of them were kept in the closet before they were readily accepted. A lot more of them committed suicide before they were readily accepted, which is still a huge problem today, but still, it was a lot more of a problem. This is the idea of societal progression, is looking at those traditional values, questioning them intellectually, debating these concepts, and realizing that there is a better, more advanced way. And 9 times out of 10, 99.9% of the time, when you're favoring the idea of a greater kind of acceptance and a breaking down the walls of what traditional values builds, you're creating a more advanced society. But this is everything that Ben Shapiro is afraid of. It has nothing to do with the concept of freedom of expression. If you watch an earlier episode of mine, he talks about, well, we've always been defending the leftist and progressive value of freedom of speech, but it's your war on the freedom of speech that's now causing you problems. That doesn't sound like the case here, Ben. Methinks that there is a touch of not being genuine here.
Do in my bedroom is my business. 2, what I do in my bedroom is your business, should be celebrated, should be put on a pedestal. And if you refuse to celebrate this and put this on a pedestal, this means that you're a bad person in some way. It is a complete reversal of public morality. Because there's a process that is used very often by the political.
No one is saying you have to embrace it. What do you mean by even embrace it? The look on his face in the freeze frame here is kind of exactly how I'm feeling listening to his dumb speech. Just, yeah, like what sort of what does he mean embrace it? Like you have to go and have scantily clad women singing WAP in your bedroom? You have to embrace it too? Like what does he mean by that? You can even criticize. You're free to criticize it. You can say, I think that was too much for television. And then somebody else can say, well, I think you're a little uptight. But that's like the freedom of exchange. But how he's trying to present it here is in that very sense of it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't have a platform, and no good society should welcome this. That is the position he's presenting in that, which is the exact same position that anybody on a progressive side or leftist side argues in terms of the things that they complain about cancel culture. And even that, like, let's be honest, 9 times out of 10 when they're talking about cancel culture, it's not even anything real that any leftist or progressive actually wants. It's just fake outrage. But let's say for the sake of the benefit of the doubt here, that they're talking about something that progressives / leftists actually want. And they're complaining about it in that sense. Like, say, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now. I should have written down an example before the show. But let's just say it's something they actually want, and he's kicking up a fuss with it. Like, say, I don't know, wanting women to be able to embrace their sexuality in song the way men have always done without nearly the same level of scrutiny that Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B are currently experiencing. Or is it Megan Thee Stallion? Am I supposed to say it I'm sorry, I'm not that hip. I'm trying. I think I'm supposed to say the. That's part of the name, right? Anyway. Yeah, like, yeah. Let's say we want that. We're trying to embrace that. We tried to get that on TV, right? Let's say we actually wanted it, rather than Cardi B just making it and we're going, yeah, cool. That's at least what it is for me, anyways. Let's say that was happening. And he's coming up with this argument about it. It literally is the same as I'm still trying to think of an example of something we actually wanted to cancel because it was too offensive. That is actually ridiculous. I can't think of anything. God, I was thinking like Harvey Weinstein. Well, the guy he obviously is a rapist. I mean, Ben Shapiro and people like him try to defend him too. So I don't know. I don't even know if I want to get into that angle now. Now I'm just getting frustrated with it. But that eye-rolly face, I just keep looking at it. Maybe I should just continue on here and let Ben Shapiro just dig himself his own hole. Because again, when we as progressives and leftists try and point out the fault in something and why it's wrong and why we believe it's against good values in society, it's almost the same position he's trying, or same sort of intellectualization he's attempting to do for his traditional values here.
The left, and it goes something like this. If you're polite, you'll leave me alone, right? You won't say that my activity in private is sinful. And people go, okay, okay, I guess. And then it goes,
okay, I guess. Oh, I can't call you sinful for being gay. I guess. Ben Shapiro really laments that fact. Yeah.
Well, I want to say what I want to say publicly. And if you say anything, then you're really being impolite. And you say, well, but don't I get to have an opinion? And they say, well, no, if you don't celebrate what I am doing, then you are being impolite. Politeness becomes a weapon.
But Ben, what if we don't celebrate, racism and want that, not to be something that's considered part of polite society? What if we argue for that? What if we try and embrace things like, being able to let black pop stars do the same sort of things that white pop stars did without the same level of scrutiny, and being able to realize that maybe there is some prejudice that motivates that scrutiny? What if that, Ben? But when you shift it in that direction, suddenly, strictly because it's a violation of his traditional values, and it's hate and bigotry attempted to be intellectualized, that he presents it this way. There's no other way around it. It seems to me that the way he's talking here, he perfectly understands why the quote unquote cancel culture he seems to hate so much is even a thing at all.
Well, at a certain point, being polite to people who wish to tear down all traditional values is a large-scale mistake.
Wow. What if not being racist was a traditional value? What if anti-racism was a traditional value, Ben? What if we considered it that? And somebody trying to tear it down should not be really accepted in polite society. Maybe that isn't a very good idea, Ben. It's almost like you're on to something there. Almost. It's the classic concept of conservatives really, really inching close to the point, but not quite getting there. I just want to hear that again. I want to hear him basically describe the whole thing in a nutshell that destroys essentially hours worth of his own programming.
To people who wish to tear down all traditional values, what I am doing, then you are being impolite. Politeness becomes a weapon. Well, at a certain point, being polite to people who wish to tear down all traditional values is a large-scale mistake.
Yeah, being polite to people that are bigots, being polite to people that are transphobic, being polite to people that are racist is a very big mistake. That is not something that the left considers a part of a functional, decent society. But again, your traditional values leads you to have bigotry. So now he has to frame it in the sense of, oh, you're attacking traditional values. That's not a good idea. Why isn't it a good idea, Ben? Why is that not a good idea? When freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and the whole concept of questioning society and questioning its values for the sake of intellectualism, advancement, and freedom of expression. suddenly that's just, it's not a concern to him as well. Thank you, Jessica. He's just so close to the point where I feel like he knows. It's hard to believe that he doesn't know. He has to realize he's so close to the edge. He has to be able to see it.
And what we have seen in the United States is the triumph of what some philosophers have called expressive individualism, the idea that you get to do what you want and the rest of the world is supposed to adapt to you. This has been written into our Supreme Court decisions, famously in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, Justice Anthony Kennedy, one of the worst justices of the modern era.
It's not that they have, like, you don't have to like it. You don't have to say, like, wow, I'm a huge fan of gays. Like, you don't have to be a fan of men having sex with each other. You just have to, you are expected to not be prejudiced against them or exercise prejudice against them based on the fact that you feel that way. You cannot violate their rights based on that. No one's saying that you have to embrace it. It's about acceptance. It's about tolerance. It's not about, if you're not getting right on that gay wagon and jumping on the pride float and toot toot, you're a homophobic. Like, nobody's saying that. Nobody wants that. I mean, there's, of course, part of every queer person like myself that would be like, it'd be all right though. But like, realistically speaking, we don't genuinely expect every human person to be on board with that and feel comfortable doing that. But here's Ben creating hours and hours of programming around the idea that, basically presenting the concept that this type of existence is an affront to traditional values, and thus it should not be allowed. And we should be allowed to be bigoted towards these people.
Era wrote an entire swath of the decision in which he suggested that the Constitution provides us all our own right to define life, liberty, and the nature of the universe. Somehow this also allowed us all to define the nature of human life itself, such that you could kill a baby in the womb. But this idea that you have a right to define...
You're trying to define life itself in that, not specifically here now, but part of your shtick is that you try and present the human experience in life itself as if trans and non-binary people are illegitimate, despite the fact that there is tremendous amounts of evidence towards the contrary. You try and dictate those terms all the time. The fact that anybody can listen to this guy for even a few minutes and say, he has some good points. No, he doesn't. It's complete straw manning and projection from start to finish. And again, I have an extremely difficult time believing that he is not aware of that fact, that he knows he's fleecing you. You know how much that microphone he's got sitting next to him costs? If it's the real deal, it's a few $1,000s at least. I doubt he has some kind of knockoff. He had a U87 next to him before on the last episode of his that I watched, and those are $4,000 here in Canada. This guy's getting money, okay? He is well-funded. He is successful at this. He gets lots of mainstream media attention. He is not an oppressed voice speaking up for traditional values. He is a sophist pig that is pulling the wool over tons of people's eyes, namely very old people who are just angry about a changing world in general, and then younger people who want to be edgy and feel like, the changing world is an affront to their privilege, ongoing and growing up and getting into the working world and having a career and being successful. Yeah. I don't know if I got much else to say on this one. This is just like the intro to this episode. But just picking apart some of the things that he's saying here, it's unbelievable.
And the universe around you is ridiculous. It's ridiculous on its face. The universe around you exists. It is an objective reality. You don't have the right to redefine society that is not in accordance with reality.
Yet here you are doing exactly that. That's amazing. It's astonishing. The lack of self-awareness. If to any, especially younger people right now that are listening, or maybe even especially older, because I feel like you have less of an excuse, that listens to this guy and thinks that there's any kind of point to be had here, you should feel embarrassed. It's embarrassing. It's so ridiculous and intellectually dishonest and just plain stupid. It's shameful. Grow up. Jesus Christ, Ben. It's just nuts. It's sort of cathartic to be able to get angry at this stuff and unpack it. There's a certain catharticism and entertainment value in doing that. But honestly, I wish this wasn't such a prominent thing in media right now, that this even necessitates talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, I wish there was a bigger fish to fry, so to speak. And of course there is. You could argue that there is. But in terms of just the buzz around this stuff and what gets people's attention and gets them thinking about where we're at as a society and how we relate to each other and where we're going, this is unfortunately big news. And it's prominent. So thus, it sort of has to be addressed and has to be unpacked. And it's hard to know where to draw the line in terms of, where do you stop and take a break from it and try and embrace something else? I'm trying to find that balance still. I question it. But this was just like, when I was watching just that first few minutes of that video earlier, it was so nuts to me that he was basically just so close to the point. In fact, like getting right on it. It's like the point was shoved thoroughly into his rectum, and he was just still like, I don't feel it. Crazy. Anyway, that's my show. That's my stream for today. We're going to be doing this again next week. So Twitch, hopefully get used to me. I'm going to be back every week, 7 p.m. with another episode of The Rough Report. We broadcast to Facebook. We broadcast to YouTube. We broadcast to now Twitch. Follow me on the other social media stuff right here. Oh, there. I'll get used to this eventually. And if you're on Twitch and YouTube and stuff, like, subscribe, share. I don't have any donation controls or anything set up yet, but I want to, and that is something that I plan on doing. So the best way you can support right now is to like, subscribe, and share, and comment, and engage. I thank you so much for joining me on the program today, and we'll be back next week. I'm Jimmy Ruffian, and this has been The Rough Report.